for leaderships.
Hello and welcome to another SkaredCast battle report. Today we go to the depths of space. Playing Battle Fleet Gothic, the Dark Eldar are facing off against the Nova Marine Space Marine chapter in a 1,000-point battle. We're going to set up the table on this awesome fat mat and we're going to roll some dice. So sit back and enjoy the show. Let's begin! In the middle of the system, in the biosphere, two armies are going to clash. We have the Dark Eldar raiding fleet versus the Space Marines using Battle Fleet Gothic Revised Edition. So we've rolled up a really happening battlefield with a couple of small planets, some asteroid belts on both flanks, a couple of dust clouds, and this is a sunward edge where the sun is, over there. So we're going to be deploying. It's just going to be a cruiser clash. So 1,000 points versus 1,000 points. Check the links down below for some army lists action if you're interested in knowing what is in the armies, and as well all the links for other videos and whatnot. But let's get this on the road. I'm playing Evan once again. This is our third Battle Fleet Gothic epic showdown. Let's begin. Okay, so the Dark Eldar had to start deploying first, but their attack rating allowed them to choose to go first or second. In Battle Fleet Gothic Revised, the Dark Eldar mimic engines means that they cannot be targeted in the first 2 turns of the game. So I've decided to go first to get myself closer to the enemy, while the Space Marines scramble and try and figure out whether this is a trading fleet or some sort of enemy. So we have torpedo ships on the flank. We have 3 strike cruisers. This is the capital ship in the back. We also have lance cruisers and gunboats. Those must die. We have a lance cruiser. We have a cruiser with launch base.
Which must die.
Which must die as well, says Evan. We have 2 units of Torture class with lances. We have Torpedo Subjugation class light cruisers, and we have the Impaler assault modules hiding behind the planet, well, clearly taking slaves from the planet, while the rest of the fleet engages in earnest. So we're moving on to Dark Eldar turn 1.
Dark Eldar turn 1, so the Dark Eldar advance at full speed.
Okay, turn 1 for the Dark Eldar was relatively swift. We had an all-head full from the carrier cruiser flagship. Come to new heading from that ship that moved around the asteroid fields. All the other ships move forward full speed as they cannot be targeted by the enemy on turn 1 and on turn 2. So I'm posed to strike on turn 3. Let's see what the Space Marines do with this on their heels.
Space Marines advanced, not being able to do anything to the Dark Eldar fleet.
Turn 1 was quick. They tried to give some orders in the backfield, and the orders failed miserably, which then shorted out communications across the entire fleet. And Evan wisely chose not to use his reroll on the first turn. So now moving on to Dark Eldar, turn 2.
The Dark Eldar poised themselves in a position to do crippling damage to the Space Marines on the 3rd turn.
Dark Eldar turn 2. Every single Dark Eldar ship came to new heading and are now facing the back rear end of the enemy army and the enemy fleet. They're all in position to strike on turn 3, and the Space Marines have no clue what's going on. They seem to be very confused. We're moving on to Space Marine turn 2.
The Space Marines advanced as much as they could and prepared to brace for the 3rd turn onslaught.
Okay, turn 2. The Space Marines are just trying to survey. The mimic engines are confusing the fleet, and now they know that they're probably going to have to sit tight as the Dark Eldar fleet unleashes hell. So we're moving on to turn 3, and we'll see what happens after the Dark Eldar start blazing the guns.
So the Dark Eldar prepared to bring all their weapons to bear on one or two of the enemy ships to bring down as much of the enemy as possible and cripple them before the game had really had a chance to begin at all.
Okay, end of the Dark Eldar shooting phase. Lots of locked-on ships. Ordnance being deployed, Impaler assault modules. I focused in on the capital ship that is the flagship with the commander. Forced him to braced impact. He is now crippled. So he's limping. And we have torpedoes ready to come in. And we have bombers and fighters and Impaler assault modules to try and finish them off. Okay. Let's move on to the Ordnance phase. Okay, end of turn 3. The Impaler assault modules did successfully hit, but they were braced for impact, so he was able to save against the bracings. And then all the bombers didn't do any damage, as they failed to penetrate the tough armor of the strike cruisers as well. Okay, we're moving on to Space Marine turn 3, with a crippled flagship and the other strike cruisers ready to pose, and another braced crippled squadron with the Gladius gunboats.
The Space Marines' retaliation was going to be swift, getting their ships into position to strike at the Dark Eldar forces.
Okay, so Space Marines have finished shooting. Forced this squadron to brace. I did lose one of the escorts, but shooting has been rather appalling. Now we have 8 torpedoes. They're going to try and smack through those blast markers into those ships. And then I've lost a shield on that capital ship. But other than that, the Dark Eldar have survived relatively unscathed. We do have 6 assault boat Thunderhawks ready to do some damage.
Only 4.
Only 4 assault boats ready to do some damage. End of Space Marine turn 3. So, the Ordnance, my turrets shot down the torpedoes, so the big salvo torpedoes died, and then the assault boats -1 leadership to that Torture-class frigate, and then we had the assault boats critical my flagship, and it cannot turn, and its prow weapons have been damaged until it gets fixed, but we're going to see if it gets fixed right now.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to turn... Well, actually, let's do it on camera. I have 6 hull points. On a 6, I repaired damage.
6 remaining?
Yeah.
Ooh.
They have 6, right?
Yep.
But he hasn't taken any damage. So, 6 is to repair some damage. Come on. Okay.
It's all repaired.
So it's all repaired. He's fine. They stopped the Space Marines that were rampaging through the hull. On to turn 4.
Having survived relatively unscathed, the Dark Eldar begin their tactical disassembly of the Space Marine army.
Okay, so Dark Eldar turn 4. So I failed my leadership test to lock on with that guy, and then I used my Archon reroll because I had a lot of orders I wanted to give out, and then my flagship failed his order.
With a 12.
With a 12, so no more orders for anyone, so that meant no reloading ordnance. That means I don't have assault craft, impalers, fighters, nothing, or torpedoes. This guy then failed his leadership test and had to shoot the closest escort, while these guys shot at him too. So I killed that last escort, successfully put 2 more points of damage on this flagship. So he's got 1 point of damage left. And we're moving on to Space Marine turn 4. Okay, right at the end, my capital ship conducted a teleport attack on the 1 hull point left, and he rolled a 6, which meant they went into the engines and did another point of damage, bringing the total to 0. So now we're rolling on the catastrophic damage table to see what happens as they ravage through the enemy flagship.
Roll high.
A 4, which is...
It's Drifting Hulk.
They reduce it to a drifting hulk and take slaves and captives back to the mothership. But the enemy flagship has been destroyed. On to Space Marine turn 4.
The Space Marines have one more chance to really do some damage to the Dark Eldar fleet.
Okay, so we had turn 4, the Drifting Hulk moved forward and a little blast mag was put. They reloaded Ordnance and are going to fire some torpedoes into a mess of Dark Eldar ships. The Novas with their lances fired on, put a hull point on the capital ship and knocked down both of its shields, while this strike cruiser knocked the shields off of that one, and one of the small torpedo escorts was destroyed by that strike cruiser there. So we're moving on to the Ordnance phase. Okay, end of the Ordnance phase. 8 torpedoes smacked into the Corsair, one of the ships, and blew one sky high. The other one braced, but the turrets knocked the other guys out of the sky. And then these guys did nothing. They just moved up, and then these assault boats killed the last escort over here. So we're moving on to Dark Eldar turn 5.
The Dark Eldar continue to press the advantage on to the Space Marine battle line and start to do some more damage on the smaller escorts.
Okay, end of shooting phase, turn 5. We had a lot of shooting annihilate all the the gunboats. Just look at the amount of blast markers. They're just like lances and batteries, and this locked-on ship just destroyed all the torpedo ships that tried to brace for impact, but it was too late by the time they chose to. And then this capital ship that successfully reloaded Ordnance killed one of the Novas, and they braced for impact. And now I have assault boats and impalers ready to run in, and I've got a little fighter pilot jets so helping the capital ship by doing some patrols around it. So it's looking bleak for the Space Marines, but this game ain't over till it's over.
The Eldar
At the end of the Ordnance phase, the assault boats from the Space Marines moved in and critically damaged to the sails, so it's -5 to its movement. And then we have the assault boats kill another one of the Novas, but this one is braced, and they were able to fend off all assailants. And I'm removing 4 of the blast markers as well at the end of the turn. Okay, moving on to the Space Marine turn.
The Space Marines are crippled, but they are not giving up, trying to gain an advantage.
Okay, end of Space Marine turn 5. A couple of blast markers disappeared. The one Nova ship took a leadership test to disengage from the battlefield, denying the Dark Eldar valuable victory points. And both strike cruisers failed to reload Ordnance as there was a scramble in communication, and the fleet commander is dead. He's been captured or killed by the Dark Eldar.
Killed.
So he does not have killed, Evan says. The reroll has gone with him. So now we're moving on to Dark Eldar turn 6. The game goes to 8 turns until there's no ships left on the table. Space combat being a brutal affair. Let's see what the Dark Eldar can do in this turn.
The Dark Eldar smell blood and swarm like locusts to their prey.
Okay, the entire Dark Eldar fleet converged on the next strike cruiser like a swarm of locusts, forcing it to brace. They took 2 shields and 2 hull points off it, and 1 critical damaged the starboard armament. I don't know how that happened. So now we're going on to the teleport attacks. I have 2 of them from 2 capital ships trying to teleport into the strike cruiser. So 2 D6s here, and one of them does a 6 and one of them does nothing, but he is braced, so let's see what happens.
Nope.
It destroys so 1 more hull point of damage.
3.
It's a 6. You rolled a 6.
Oh yeah. Yep. Engine room. So
Engine room damage. He's taken another point of damage.
He's crippled.
And he is now can't turn.
Until it's repaired.
Until it's repaired. So it's the end of the turn. So I'm going to see how many hull points. Blast markers 4. So I'm going to just take these 4 over here off. And then he's trying to repair. He needs 6s to repair the damage. And he has not repaired the damage. So the braced cruiser that is now crippled is now limping away from the enemy.
The Space Marines attempt to buy time so that the floating Hulk can escape.
Whatever.
Okay, Space Marine shooting. This ship limped forward, and a lot of shooting into the Lance capital ship. Did no damage. There were no hits out of like 8 dice rolled. So on a 5+. So, yep. Okay, the assault boats bombers are going to try and come in and do some work.
Fire bombers.
The fighter bombers are going to try and take some escorts out before the impalers start taking some serious damage. Okie dokie. Okay, the most unepic turn in history. The bombers didn't actually do anything to the escorts, which is a shame. Now we're moving to see how many blast markers get removed. 5. Now, on a side note, the reason we keep on moving this guy here is if at the end of the game he's still on the table, he provides me victory points because I capture the burning Hulk and can kind of take prisoners and stuff. But it's very close to the table edge now, so we'll see if I can capture it. Yeah, it'd be like a small victory.
To repair.
He's trying to repair the damage, and he repairs one of the damages.
I'll repair the engine room.
The engine room? Okay, cool. So now he can turn again. Okay, so let's move on to Dark Eldar turn 6.
The Dark Eldar continue their relentless assault and do not let up on the attack whatsoever.
Okay, so shooting and a couple of different things move around. Didn't do any damage to this guy here. 3 shots from him, 3 hit 6s, so I put a wound on him. Then failed to brace for impact, and a lance put another 2 on him and smashed the bridge with a critical. So let's just say the Dark Eldar rolling has been phenomenal at the end of the game here. So now we have 2 crippled strike cruisers being surrounded, and we're just going to roll to see what the teleport attacks do. It's at the end though. Teleports go after.
At the end.
Okay, so we'll be back after we see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had 1 teleport attack and a couple of impalers do 1 more damage and damage the engine room again. And then nothing happened over here with the teleport. How many blast markers do I remove?
1.
1. Okay, so I'm going to take this one away.
Repair.
And the repairs. He repairs something.
Repair the port battery, I guess.
Okay, so he's got the port batteries now work again. Great.
Abandon ship, flee. That's what they said.
I'm trying to buy time for that to get off the board.
Okay, the Space Marine cruisers are buying time for the flagship to limp off the table, and no shooting did anything except for 1 shield go down, and then some assault boats have been released to try and go do some critical damage on the Dark Eldar ships. Okay, end of turn 7. The Dark Eldar ship took some criticals and then repaired itself again. They've been crazy good at repairing some damage. And now moving on to the top of turn 8. Pretty much is going to be the end of the game after this turn. And we'll see if this ship gets 1 last effort attempt to go off the table and survive. Okay. Turn 8, let's do this.
With 1 more turn left to them, the Dark Eldar poised to do the final crippling blow.
Okay, so all the shooting did 1 hull point over here, and that's it. I locked on, I did everything. He didn't even brace for impact. And I did almost no damage. Quite a contrast to what the rest of the game has been. But I did launch 2 more impalers here. And I'm going to do a couple of teleport attacks to see whether or not we can do some damage. Okay, so the teleport attack rolled a 6, which is engine room damage, which does another point of damage. So that ship is going to die.
Roll big.
Let's see what happens.
Roll big.
A 6, so which turns it into a drifting Hulk. And then over here, the impalers put 2 fires, caused 2 fires on this one. And then the teleport attack damaged the engine room, putting another hull point. And he has to roll 2 dice and need 6s to put out the fires, so they will do a damage point. Remember, there's 2 damage points left. Do the fires kill it?
Yes!
They do! So, let's see what happens.
Go big.
Oh, it's a drifting Hulk! And the Dark Eldar have achieved a wipeout victory with only the drifting Hulks as they get pillaged. And they take people back to the Dark City as evil slaves. Evan?
Oh my god.
Good game, sir. Any last comments?
That was great. I wish my dice showed up.
Yeah, the dice didn't show up at all.
Oh well, it was fun.
It was a really fun game. Thanks a lot to Frontline Gaming and Table Wolf for the
Really
fat mat.
mat.
Look at that. It's amazing.
Really
it looks
fat mat.
so good. Like the game just came to life on this fat mat. So make sure you check the link down below. Go to Frontline Gaming and order yours today and tell them Skari sent you. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Make sure you stay tuned for the Tactical Corner. Definitely interesting battle. Those mimic engines were good, and I'm going to talk about a couple of different things at the end of the this comment. Comment, like, subscribe, share. Thanks a lot, and enjoy 2016 as we go on to the next year. Skari out.
Oh, and welcome to another Tactical Corner. So, on a beautiful fat mat, we had two great looking fleets facing off in a 1,000-point battle. So we had the Battle Fleet Gothic revised Dark Eldar fleet versus the Space Marine fleet. Now in revised edition, Space Marines strike cruisers can purchase additional shields, which makes them very resilient. This was poised to be an epic showdown. Marines are highly fast and maneuverable ships with short range, with the Dark Eldar being sleek but fragile vessels. The table had a lot of terrain, and I knew that in order to make the most of the game, I was going to be using the gravitational pull of the planets and the asteroid fields for line of sight purposes, but mostly the planet's gravitational field to really increase the movement. Now, I was able to get in behind the enemy army thanks to something called mimic engines that allowed my entire army 2 turns of movement without being able to get targeted by the enemy fleet. Now this meant that I was able to get into prime position to strike, and that is exactly what I did on my 3rd turn. I pretty much sent every single ship and vessel that I could against the enemy's flagship capital ship. Now, had it been a battle cruiser or something, it might not have worked as well, but against a light cruiser, it was really interesting to see it get crippled so quickly and have it brace for impact, which meant once that guy was down and the admiral had been destroyed together with the reroll, there was a couple of key things that needed to go. I needed to kill the torpedo ships and kill the Novas, which are the Lance, and the Gladiuses, which are the gun battery ships. Because of the maneuvering with my fleet, I was able to focus all my army on a very few targets and not really have to split up my shooting, which then meant I was able to focus on a target until it was completely destroyed. The Space Marines had a very hard time doing any return damage, with any damage that was going to be able to be done on very few shooting dice just not finding their mark most of the time, or not really doing any critical damage to the Dark Eldar forces. All in all, this was a fantastically fun game. I cannot wait to play another one. We will be adding more ships to the fleet, and once again, thanks a lot to Frontline Gaming for sending us this fat mat. It looks amazing and really brought this game to life. If anyone would like to check out the Patreon blog, please look at the links down below to check out all the constant posts and more content. This is Skari, your grateful host, signing off. Skari out, and thanks a lot for watching and tuning in.